welcome to this microfocus ZenWorks configuration video tutorial discussing the different methods and upgrade paths to migrate your ZenWorks 2017 appliance zone to ZenWorks 2020, along with a quick demonstration using an appliance as a primary server. This particular presentation focuses on the appliance as a primary server. There's another presentation that also refers to Windows or Linux as primary servers and their upgrade processes. As an overview, we're going to talk about the advantages for the appliance model. We're going to talk about test and upgrade strategies, planning, system requirements, backup and pre-upgrade tasks, as well as post-upgrade tasks, the Appliance Administration Console itself, maintenance and cleanup, debug and logging information, commands and resources, and the demonstration itself on the appliance. Advantages for appliance model. An additional virtual disk is required for an appliance, and we refer to that as VA storage. If you're looking into the Vertica database, an appliance is required there as well. You cannot load it on an OS. Appliances have standard migration paths, which makes for quicker upgrade processes, reducing the downtime. The operating system online updates are made easy. It has integrated product security, backups with snapshots, no charge for operating system license. This allows us for faster product release cycles. And SSL certificates are standard. It has a comprehensive administration console, and it is a no-cost test system, meaning if you need a test zone, you could throw up one of these appliances and you have a test zone almost immediately. Test and upgrade strategy reminders. Remember to verify the checksum of all downloaded files, whether it's a ZDC or the ISO or the VM hypervisor file. Upgrade servers on the same subnets with fast connections to the databases. Licenses, have them available during the upgrade or installation. Verify external system communications if you have ZRS or ZSD connected or some other communication like LDAP. Review, update your company's ZenWorks documentation to get familiar with the environment. Configure new features and enhancements. Don't perform OS upgrades, at least the major versions where ZCM is installed. Verify time sync between servers and database. Don't run upgrade in a SSH or PuTTY session in case you get disconnected, then you might run into some problems. Prop up a test environment for simulation. Planning tasks. Again, review the corporate ZCM environment documentation, identify the external system communications, LDAP, user sources, and so forth. Verify the ZCM 2020 prerequisites, the primary server, the databases, the satellites, managed devices, and even inventory-only devices if you're doing that. Know your ZCM scheduled, the system update schedules, the patch download schedule, the messaging, and the cleanup schedules. It's all in ZCC. Identify your dedicated servers as well, so you know what's happening on that server at the time you're doing the upgrade. You may have a dedicated patch server that has a schedule for downloads. You don't want to either interfere with that or make sure you turn it off. Additional planning tasks. Make sure you have the user IDs with rights to systems available. ZCC administrators, the database SA, root or microfocus customer care portal. That way you're not delayed when you need to grab that license or that file download. Hopefully you've prepped ahead of time, but if you need to get to something, at least you have the password to do so. Database migration required. Remember, ZCM 2020 doesn't support Sybase. So we have a database migration tool that will migrate from Sybase to PostgreSQL. That way you're supported on 2020 when you migrate 2017 to 2020. The Vertica database needed. If you're a large enough organization and you want to deploy the Vertica database, you'll need to know that appliance is necessary. Certificates expiration. Double check your primary and satellite server and CA server certificates so they don't expire during this time frame that you're doing an upgrade. Also, the mobile certificate is a max 2 years, and that's an Apple requirement now if you're doing any mobile device management. ZCM 2020 keys, product license keys, system update registration keys, and if you have an appliance, because of the Vertica database, the appliance online update channel key. Make sure you have those things available during the upgrade so you're not held up. Also, run the upgrade in a test environment, and most of all, have a backup plan. System Requirements Server OS. This particular slide will show you a migration path from any individual zone version to the next. So if you're at 11.4 and you need to get to 2017 update 0 minimum. And in order to get to 2020 from there, you need to go to directly from 2017 update 0 to 2020. Well, depending on the servers you have, you could see that server 2008 is no longer supported after 11.4. So you'll need to migrate off of that, getting a Windows 2012 server in place, or let's say SLES or Red Hat. This helps you with that migration and planning out those paths. System Requirements Database. So for your ZenWorks database, this shows the different databases, whether they're internal or external, and what versions are supported as you move to the next version. Hypervisors as well. This shows you the hypervisor versions and the supported platforms that are supported for each one of the versions. System requirements for RAM, CPU cores, and disk space. This hasn't changed too much until you get to 2020. You can see pretty much it changed from 11.4 to 2017, and then moving from 2017 to 2020 it changed again for at least the minimum and recommended RAM. Part of that is due to the Vertica database. And then the disk space needed for installations. Hasn't changed too much, but double check on this or the documentation to make sure that you're within specifications. LDAP user sources, dependencies, and certificates. Same thing goes. After 11.4, .NET 4.5 has been used straight throughout. Same with LDAP version 3 and simple bind with read. So not much has changed here, but double check this. Make sure your documentation states what you need for what you're going to, which version you're going to. System requirements reporting server, mobile browser, and management. If you're doing mobile management, double check these specs, as well as the reporting server. And finally, system requirements for display and browser support. This hasn't changed except for the new releases of the different browsers. The display, video adapter, and screen minimum resolution hasn't changed at all. Some of the backup tasks: backup the ZCM Primary Server, backup the ZCM database, ZenWorks audit, and then when you get to 2020, don't forget the Vertica database if you have it deployed. Backup and verify customizations and settings, system variables, FTFs, TFTP, and images. You can do some of that with the ZMan Commands ZSB and ZMan Commands DB if you have an internal database. External content repo, and then of course back up your databases if they're external. Some of the pre-upgrade tasks. Run ZenWorks Diagnostic Center on each primary and each database. On the appliance, run the Novell ZenWorks Prereq RPM to prepare the VA storage for the move. Migrate and move the database, which is conditional. If you're on Sybase, you're going to have to migrate to another platform that's supported. And we have a DB migration tool that will migrate from Sybase to Postgres. Or if you're moving the database to some other platform, this might be the time to do it before you actually do the upgrade. If you do this particular step by migrating or moving the database, make sure you have another few days for it to settle in before you actually make the move to 2020. Identify the first master primary either with the internal database or the CA role. You want to configure available and free disk space for primary servers and databases. And then conditional, the appliance requires an additional virtual disk. Should you add one in, it needs a additional disk, at least 60 gigabytes. We refer to it as VA storage if you don't have an appliance. And also, I mention that because if you're going to the Vertica database, you're a larger organization and want that reporting in that detail, the Vertica database requires an appliance, which requires RAM and disk space. And then stop all the services on all other primaries except the first master primary. Upgrade the zone to ZCM 2020 is the next step. On the appliance, you'll basically download the ZCM 2020 appliance, do the checksum, MD5 checksum, put it in your VM system. You'll identify the ZCM 2017 VA storage volume and move that to the 2020 VM. That'll be the second disk. You'll power up the ZCM 2020 appliance. You'll give it the root and XenAdmin passwords. Then you'll log into port 9443 and follow the wizard to complete the upgrade. It should bring in the identity of the 2017 zone. Remember a few things, but once the ZCC system update shows successful, move to the next primary server. Once the ZC system update shows successful on all primary servers, then you deploy the ZCM agent to the satellite servers. And then once that shows successful on all the satellite servers, you then move to the managed devices. Now that you've completed your upgrade, there's some post-upgrade tasks that need to be done. Restore and or verify the external system communications like your LDAP users, ZRS or ZSD, or other systems. Remember, if you went from 2017 Sybase to Postgres or another database, and you've had ZRS configured or ZSD configured, and now you've upgraded your zone to 2020, you need to reconnect those systems to the new database. Appliance online updates. Be sure to register and check for updates so your OS is up to date. Start configuring the new features. Back up the new ZCM and its components, and update the corporate ZCM environment documentation. The appliance has its own console, and this is on port 9443. It's referred to the Appliance Administration Console. As you can see here, the top portion is the appliance configuration, and the bottom portion is ZenWorks. You can see who you're logged into. On the upper right, we're in as XenAdmin, and the zone name is there and the version. As well as you can reboot, shut down, or restart services right here from this console. Maintenance and cleanup. So for file cleanup, be careful about some superseded versions. They may be needed for previous versions to functions. Like 17.4.1 needs some 17.4.0 files, and you could refer to this TID for an example, 7012.095. Also, another example is if using imaging with older agents, you need to make sure that you still have the support for that. Also, if migrated from the Sybase database, future ZCM 2020 updates will clean up the residual Sybase information because it's no longer supported. And once you get to 2020, there's no turning back to Sybase at all. ZCM debug and other logs. Debug settings and logs, you can use the infamous TID 3418069, and there are other logs you can look at when trying to diagnose your appliance. The messages log, the zipper log, the Apache error log, Jetty logs, and data model logs. So be aware that those are there, and depending on what you're troubleshooting, there's a few logs that we can look at to see if we can diagnose your issue. Troubleshooting the upgrade process failures. Of course, you can check TID 3418069 for debug and logging in different individual components of ZCM. Also, if you want to check the migration progress as it's going on, you can tail -F the ZCM migration log. We've also seen an error where a new disk is needed, and that prompt comes up for some reason. Check TID 7024440. We've also seen an error where the upgrade performs like a new install, and it asks you for the zone name that you want to name it. That's when you first go into the Administration Console in 9443. Well, ways to check on that is make sure the appliance prereq file has been run, because it prepares ZCM for the ZCM 2020 upgrade. It prepares that VA storage. You can also check the FS tab that it shows VA storage. That VA storage is mounted. And within the VA storage, check the .prereq completed file if it's present. If it is, it's been run. If services are started on the Postgres database, you can check it with systemctl status Zen Postgres. And then, had you migrated, of course, from Sybase to Postgres, you can also check a few other things, like if Postgres is installed in the version by doing an rpm-qa, pipe grep Postgres. And then double check your zdm.xml and Zen audit XML that it shows the proper database. You went from Sybase to Postgres, that it shows Postgres. The very first thing upgrades do is upgrade the database schema. It reaches out to the database, does a schema, the indexes, the tables, and so forth. Then it reaches out to the primary servers and upgrades the system files and components. At any time, had you done the Sybase to Postgres upgrade and it failed, remember it has an option to restart or resume. If you resume, it may have already copied some bad tables before it found out it was errored out. So if you resumed, you may have some bad tables in there, and that may be an issue. So it's always best, even though we have that option, it's always best to restart that migration from Sybase to Postgres, should it have failed, so that it gets everything in its entirety. ZCM commands you could use. Remember, the TID has some of those, 341-8069. You can use the Novell ZenWorks configure -C start. Some ZMan commands you could use. If you want to back up your ZenWorks zone configuration, not your database, but your configuration, you can use ZMan ZSB. If you wanted to back up your internal database, if you're using one, ZMan DB. And database connection credentials. You can always get those with ZMan DGC and ZMan DGCA, should you need to get into the database with credentials. And that's the internal database. And of course, the services command, you can use the initd Novell Zen server status if you're SLES 11. SLES 12 or later, you can use the systemctl, or again, the Novell ZenWorks configure -C system status command. The command to look at the Postgres internal database on Linux is systemctl status zenpostgres.service. ZCM resources, there's plenty of them out there. Micro Focus ZenWorks configuration management documentation sites. There's ZCM 2020, 2017, and 11.4. They're there in full entirety. However, if you look up the cookbook for the version you're upgrading, you can also find the documentation within there. Also, it has reminders and quick links to other areas so that you can get information much quicker. Micro Focus Ideas portals for ZenWorks and other products is out on the community site, as well as the ZenWorks public forums. Be sure to use the forums. There's plenty of knowledgeable people out there that can answer your questions. NTS goes out there and tries to monitor that, as well as partners, as well as colleagues that have been through what you might be going through. ZenWorks Cool Solutions has great tips and webinars. There's on-demand training course and free videos. So if you look at that course catalog for on-demand training, there are free videos out there and training courses for a lot of the Micro Focus products, including ZenWorks Configuration Management, ZenWorks Service Desk, and desktop containers. There is also a Micro Focus Zencast bi-weekly live discussions and demonstrations, and you can see the recordings as well. Subscribe to the Micro Focus Support and Training YouTube channel, and you'll get notifications. You can also see the recordings out there under the youtube.com user Novell demo. This particular Zencast, it broadcasted the first and third Tuesday of every month at 9 o'clock Mountain Time, North America. So you can tune in and you can ask your questions right on chat, and we'll do our best to answer them, or we'll give you some information so that we can make sure you get the answers you need. Now we'll do our demonstration, upgrading ZCM to ZCM 2020 on an appliance platform. It is time-lapse to save time. We're going to first go out to the Novell documentation for ZCM 2020, review the what's new, system requirements, and upgrade processes. Then we're going to go to the cookbook, which has direct links to the documentation, downloads, ZDCs, and other things, as well as known issues for the ZCM 2020 upgrade. We're going to go to the customer portal and look at our product keys. We can download those there. We can download our product here, whether it's the ISO or whether it's the VMs or appliances. And we can get the supporting files as well. If you notice, the DB Migration Tool 3.1 is currently out there, as well as a Novell ZenWorks prep.zip file, which preps the appliance VA storage volume. Next, we're going to go to the Customer Center, and under Entitlements, you can actually see your ZenWorks Update entitlements, which is your online update registration keys for your appliance, as well as your NCC and system update keys. Here's the ZenWorks appliance. We're at 17.4.1. We are on port 9443, the Administration Console, logged in as ZenAdmin. Let's check our ZenWorks Control Center. We can see that we're on a PostgreSQL database, and you can see that our ZCC shows 17.4.1. Next, we're going to go and make sure we've downloaded our ZDC and the Novell ZenWorks prereq file. You can see that's here, as well as the Novell file, prereq file. It's under the temp directory. So let's go there on our appliance. Here we are on our appliance. We're going to need to change the ZDC to make it executable, so that we can run ZDC. So we're going to change mod 755, the ZDC, and then run the ZDC on the databases, both the Zen database and the audit database and the system files. Again, this is time-lapsed. There we go. You can find your reports under the reports directory. Do make sure you review that before you move on, and make sure any errors that are in there can be ignored or that we correct them. Give us a call if necessary. We're going to change the executable rights on the Novell ZenWorks prereq script as well, and then run it. This prepares a VA storage volume, and you can see it's completed successfully. Now we're going to stop the Novell ZenWorks services on this appliance, and we're going to power down. This is the only device in the zone. So once we upgrade this, it's going to baseline immediately because there's no other devices in the zone. But we'll see that when we're done with our upgrade. As we power down, our next steps would be to find out where our VA storage volume exists. And since I'm on VMware Workstation Pro and not ESXi, I have not consolidated my volumes, so we're going to have to grab all of my volumes. But we also need the latest snapshot for our 2017. And our latest snapshot is 007. And there's a directory they exist in. So let's go ahead and copy those over to the 2020 appliance. There are the volumes. Now we're going out to our 2020 appliance that we've already installed but have not powered up. We can see the directory here. We're going to go ahead and drop those volumes in there and pick the 07 as our added disk. We'll go ahead and paste 07 exists in there. Let's go ahead and add a new disk. It's going to be an existing disk. and we're going to browse over to that particular 007. Okay. Now we're ready to power up this ZCM 2020 appliance, and it should pick up the identity of the 2017 zone, as well as the IP address, DNS, and so forth. The first thing it'll ask us to do is put in a root and Zen admin password for this appliance. We'll go ahead and do that, and as soon as we hit OK and enter, you'll see that it brings in the IP address, the DNS, the domain search, and so forth. This is a good thing. It's going to bring in the VA storage. It sees it as the additional disk, and it's going to bring us up to a login. We're now going to go over to the Appliance Console, Administration Console, and log in as Zen admin with the root password we put, or the Zen admin password. It's going to give us a checklist of things to do to back up and so forth. Verify those things. We're going to put in some zone administration credentials, and we'll use administrator. This is our ZCC login. We have the options for ZenWorks Suite licensing or ZenWorks 2020 individual product licensing. Depending on what you're using, you can then select these here. You need to enter a key of some sort or at least evaluate. So we're going to enter the ZenWorks 2020 licensing for the suite and do the upgrade. We can view the upgrade log at any time. Again, this is time-lapsed. So at 100%, you can review the upgrade log and see the full upgrade in a new browser window. And you can parse it out depending on what your options are here. We'll go ahead and hit close. We'll look at our administration console. We can see we're at 2020. We can see we're on a PostgreSQL database. It brought everything over, including the identity, except it does show that we need to restart the appliance service and apply the settings. You can do that in this console. We're going to power down and back up. Now that we're back up, you can see we're completely at 2020. We can see our ZenWorks configuration. We can open ZenWorks Control Center from here. Let's log in and let's double check our diagnostics or configuration first. Our configuration for system updates. Let's see if it's complete. We want to make sure the packages are rebuilt. It's actually baselined since it's the only device in here, as I mentioned. We're at 2020 here, and that concludes this demonstration upgrading to ZenWorks 2020 on an appliance platform. There are some other demonstrations you may need to be aware of. If you're still on Sybase, you can use the Micro Focus ZCM database migration tool. And there's a 4-part series depending on what type of database you're migrating, but the details is a very important one in all the migration options for databases. There's a demo using the ZCM 2020 installer ISO, so if you forget to migrate your Sybase and you bring up the 2020 ISO, it'll automatically go into the database migration for you, telling you that you have to do that first. And then there's a demo using the DB migration tool going from the internal Sybase to the PostgreSQL, and then the DB migration tool going from external MS SQL to PostgreSQL. So for a summary, we've covered the advantages for an appliance model, tests and upgrade strategies, pre-upgrade and backup tasks, migration method tasks, post-upgrade tasks, system requirements, the Appliance Administration Console, debug and logging information, resources, and our demonstration. We hope this clears up some questions that you might have and what to expect when upgrading the Micro Focus ZenWorks Configuration Management to ZCM 2020. Thank you for watching.